Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. My name's Rob Furnival, and I'm Director of Alliances and Partnerships at Eden House. We're a business that helps forward-thinking businesses reimagine their business processes by harnessing the power of SAP innovation to drive transformation in your business. As a leading SAP Platinum partner, Eden House specializes in the sale, implementation, support, and hosting of SAP's products and services. We specialize in SAP, but in the last few years, the portfolio has grown so rapidly, we realized we needed to partner with experts in certain areas. Today, our webinar is being presented by Andrew Sawyer and Bill Oliver from Winterhawk, who are a direct partner of Eden House. Winterhawk are both part of our kinship partner ecosystem and also a united VAR solution provider, providing expertise in security and GRC for both SAP and non-SAP workloads. So now I'd like to hand over to Andy and Bill, who are going to run the session.
Thanks, Rob. So hi, everybody. I'm Andy Sawyer. I'm the Director of Operations at Winterhawk. And as highlighted by Rob, it'll be Bill and myself that are taking you through today's webinar. So at Winterhawk, we specialize in services relating to SAP GRC, security, identity management, really with a focus on risk, regulatory governance, as well as data protection. And in today's session, we'll be discussing some of the ways that we can kind of overcome those challenges relating to application vulnerability and how to more effectively protect our data from both internal and external exploits. We'll also take a look at some of the preferred solutions in the marketplace and review some of the ways to kind of improve efficiency around your current processes. Now, I'm going to hand over to Bill, who will take us through the first half of the section. So, Bill, over to you.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, everybody. As I move the next slide. Appreciate that, Andy. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. I get to talk about the fun stuff. I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of our cybersecurity and some of those great stuff with SAP today. We're looking really, the first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about predictability, predictive analytics, and really how it works. You'll see, and back in 1954, there was a short novel called The Minority Report, where they were able to predict crime or predict events right before they were happening. Tom Cruise made it a famous movie years and years later. And what you're seeing is that technology now exists to some capacities where you can kind of look and predict some things. The example here is a Japanese company. I've done work in Las Vegas. For those who have been in Las Vegas, they do a lot of that in the casinos. And really, you're looking at ways to be, really predict and look at analysis that says, hey, what could be coming next? The challenge you have here, though, is now that the good guys have that capabilities, the bad actors also do. They now are more and more, as they're trying to penetrate, break in the cybersecurity threats, they now can predict some of your moves and counteract them equally so. So it's really kind of a unique scenario there. Looking, and why did we get here? How did we get here? Digital transformation. I think that's what they're calling 2020. Well, actually, they're probably calling 2020 a lot of other things, but digital transformation, we'll use that for now. And really, the more and more, the more capabilities, the more abilities to really, barriers are really moving through this. So you have a scenario whereby it's easier and easier to get on the web. It's easier and easier to put data there. It's really the barriers of entry. They're disappearing. They're moving through the scenarios. It's like Uber. You think about it, Uber, the ride-sharing company, they really just own an application and some money. They don't own the drivers. They don't have the passengers. They don't own the cars. And it's really very easy to get on the web. So people started doing some hacks, started doing some of that stuff. And when you saw that, you started to see scenarios where they were like, oh, wow, they found out about this product called SAP and like where all this data is. So really you see that and you're looking at the scenarios as people are doing digital transformation, as they're going to the web, bad actors, the cybersecurity is moving on and on and on. Getting more into cybersecurity, this is one of my favorite slides. This is done by the World Economic Forum. They published this report on global risk. You can get it off their website. They do the research the last quarter of the year. So for 2020, this was done Q4 2019 and published in January of 2020. And if you're familiar with the quadrants, the Gartner quadrants, you'll see there's 4 of them. And, you know, high likelihood, high impact, right? And you look to the right where that circle is. One of the higher impacts and higher likelihoods is cyber attacks. It's happening all the time. You'll see off to the right, many attacks. A lot of my customers ask me, well, people don't hack SAP, they just go into the server, they go into this. Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the SAP hacks as we go through this. One of the things, I would be remiss if I didn't show you this. If you go to the left of the circle that says cyber attack, you'll see a square box. That would be known as a high impact but a low likelihood. That there was infectious disease. You're looking at the way we are today in the COVID-19 world. I think they would probably love to redo that, recalibrate and redo that to kind of move that up a little bit. But again, this looks at risks holistically across the board. You'll see things also like weapons of mass destruction. It is a global risk picture, and cybersecurity is right there. And I encourage you to take a look. It's a great read. It's about a 40-page report. You get it for free. Definitely a great read. Now on to some SAP as it relates to cybersecurity. The Pomon Institute in 2020 did a cost of insider threats. And I won't read the whole slides to you, but some really key points of this is 65% of the surveyed said SAP was breached at least once in the past 24 months. That's a big number. I think it might be a little bigger depending on how you're looking at it and how you're calculating it from risk. If you're on the cloud, did one system get breached by 3 customers? But again, that number unto itself is huge. The other one is the bottom number, 47%. Not confident or had no confidence that they could detect an SAP breach within a year. Off to the right, you'll see the numbers that talk a little bit about, you know, it takes over 70 days to get someone out of your system. And there's another statistic here that wasn't asked that you can research, and the number is 210 days. And it's an average of 210 days is how long a hacker stays in your system before they're caught, before you know that they're there, and then another 70 days to get rid of them. And more you're seeing people are going after SAP. The data is there, the credit card information, retirement information, product information, and the actors are getting more, the threat actors are more and more sophisticated. They're using that predictive analytics. The barriers are coming down, and that's really huge. There's a couple of things we do out there. I'm involved in some vulnerability assessments I'll talk a little bit about later to really kind of start hardening your SAP systems. People talk a lot about hardening your systems, hardening your networks. I talk about hardening your SAP systems. On to SAP. Here's some of what I would say are some of the more high-end famous ones. There's a few more that just came out. I'm familiar with the 10K Blaze issue. You probably have seen that with the host file. But really, a while back, the Greek Ministry of Finance, if you all remember back when Greece was a little bit on shaky economic ground, they were working with the World Bank on trying to determine how they could re-enter the marketplace, kind of some financial assurances. They had a collapse or close to collapse on economy. Well, a hacker group known as Anonymous actually found a 0-day exploit, one that was never known, no patches for it. And they broke into their SAP system. You know, there was a lot of data in there. And they shared a lot of the sensitive documents around the negotiation and how they were going to pay back the loans. And that was just devastating. That really hurt. Anonymous published this. They acknowledged it. It was a 0-day on a server There's a scramble to get it fixed. But again, that was a straight up SAP system. The other thing we've seen, and we've seen it for quite a while, since the beginning of the 2000s, was malware. I've seen this a couple places in the SAP GUI where people are been testing, putting malware to look for tracing steps, tracing screen prints, tracing key logging, and a lot of times it gets into the GUI. 7.4 just had a fix. The version 7.4 had a patch fix just a while ago to take care of that. But that's one of those things where people are trying to get the information. They're not really looking to do what I would say your traditional denial of service attacks or anything of that nature. They really want to grab that information, hence the reason why they're staying in your systems for those 200 plus days. It's really, really good stuff. The last one is an interesting one. It's related to the US. And the USIS was an organization that was set up to do background checks for US personnel in the military and intelligence services and law enforcement, so they could access sensitive data, sensitive files. It's your background check, NATO secret, most secret, top secret, secret. That got breached, and all their personal data got taken off. It was alleged that there were some people from the Chinese government. That's only been alleged. Obviously, we don't want to claim that. But that was a really big hit. Things were taken, like people's, obviously their address, their bank accounts, their medical records was all claimed. I had personal knowledge of that from a couple of angles. You'll see the bottom letter. They had to use the post services to mail letters and paper to the individuals, and that was the one I got. My wife got one as well. That didn't go over as well, but yeah, this is real. And what I tell people is SAP is a target. It is getting hacked. It is something that bad actors want to be involved in. As I was talking earlier, we do some things around vulnerability assessments. Been doing them for a few years here with Winterhawk. We've been doing them. We see a lot out there. And any given day, you see, we go in and we kind of scan the systems, and it's before that pen test. It's before the vulnerability management. You know, a lot of people tell me, oh, we want to go do a pen test, Bill. We want to go out there and do this. And I said, you don't even know how your system is. Why don't we go look at your vulnerabilities? Look at where you are on patch management. Look at where you are on some of the other configuration items, and then get to a pen test. And when I talk about this, the vulnerabilities, I'm talking outside of the SAP authorization concept, outside of SAP roles, outside of profile generator, if you will. This is kind of that. And the first thing we see is the missing patches. Anywhere between 100 and 300 security patches, and I'm talking about security patches, are missing. And a lot of that is people and companies are patching their systems, as you know, on a quarterly basis, on a yearly basis. They're packing and unpacking, and they consider all patches the same. And what I tell people, not all patches are equal. And you need to take your security patches, which come out monthly on the second Tuesday, and they come out, and you've got to evaluate them. And you've got to say, which ones should I move forward, which ones I should move back. And SAP they use a CVSS ranking, which is a common vulnerability assessment score, as well as they call it hot news, high, medium, low. You got to get those in sooner rather than later on the hot news and the highs. I put some of my favorite SAP notes. Check your system, make sure you have these covered either through a collective note or any one of these. You'll see the denial of services. There are a couple out there for that. However, they don't really play that well. People just, I don't see people or bad actors, threat actors really taking out denial of services. They really like the one below, the two below, really the information vulnerabilities. They want your data. They want to try to get your data. The data is extremely valuable to them. They want to try to get that. The remote command on the J2Es, those are very popular too, and they use it to get data. So really, those are the key. And as we see more and more SAP systems becoming more outside the network, more customer-facing, more web-facing, you now have the enablers, the barriers are coming down, the enablers with you know, the new UI5 and all that coming out, you see more and more companies putting that on the web and more companies scanning it. There was another study that just came out that said there was from 2014 to 2019, there was a 400% increase in SAP systems facing the web, things that could be scanned and pinged and found, and people, bad actors just love that. Vulnerability assessment. I'm going to talk a little bit about this one here. I highly recommend it. And again, a lot of people want to go into the really attractive stuff. Oh, let's go do a pen test, Bill. Let's go do this. Let's go correlate data to see if we can do that. I'm like, well, before you do all that, I always recommend my customers take that step back and really look at really a scenario of, do you know, have you done an audit? Do you know what all the holes are? I totally recommend first looking at that vulnerability set, looking across your landscapes, and it's just not your production landscape anymore. You got to look at some other things. You got to look at your dev and your QA. The majority of people, bad actors that come into a system usually come through a quality assurance system. Just a little note there for you. And really, you look at that and you say, hey, where am I? Where am I behind in notes? What kind of configuration have I done? Have I done the host file as star so I can let anyone talk to my main set? How have I configured SAP Router? Am I still using SAP Router? Those kind of scenarios. Again, outside of the authorizations, although we do check, and I do check for the default passwords on some of the SAP Star and things like that. You'd be amazed how many I see. And really recommend you go after that, then harden. It's a process of hardening your SAP, getting that hardened, getting that like a hardened network, getting that protected, and then I totally recommend going after it. So then you want to continue on this journey, look at pen testing, look at some of the other things, but that's where I would recommend going first. Hope you enjoyed it. Andy, I think I'm going to go back to you now for the rest of the slides. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, so it might sound a little bit obvious, but kind of knowing and truly understanding what your risk is really paramount to building the effective response. So, you know, when we talk about things like, you know, having appropriate safeguards in place to, you know, avoid those large-scale impacts or regulatory failings, or maybe even external or internal fraud, you know, it's becoming a lot more difficult to manage, especially, you know, alongside, you know, the operational demands as well. Right? You know, we're all being asked to do more these days, so the business challenge is not going away. The need for preventative measures, that's not going away. So mostly it's only actually increasing. That is the current trend right now. And you know, with a lot of solutions in the marketplace, it can be kind of tricky to really determine what's right or what's fit for your organization. But with the right solution and the right business focus, you can kind of, you know, get these challenges under control by not just mitigating the risk, but also, you know, at the same point, trying to reduce the manual workload as well on the teams, you know, through automation, which then frees up, you know, your users and your teams to kind of, you know, focus more on those value-added activities. So, so in this next section, really what I want to take you through are kind of 4 key business challenges and solutions that we recommend to support the reduction of risk and kind of help secure your SAP environments a bit more. So firstly, we've got the challenge that, you know, most organizations are probably fairly familiar with, and that's access governance. The majority of organizations, you know, who are running SAP today have probably encountered SAP access control at some point if they don't already have it installed. You know, for many years, it really has been that best practice solution to kind of gain that insight and effectively manage your SAP access risk. As a solution, you know, it's also providing features, you know, to assist in, you know, the controlled assignment of sensitive access, you know, performance of, you know, automated user access reviews, and also has a hand in SAP user provisioning as well. Now, on our previous webinar, we also actually discussed ERP Maestro, which is a very like-minded solution to SAP access control, but it's targeted at organizations who, you know, are looking to address the same business challenges, but through an efficient cloud platform. So it's doing the same job, just slightly differently presented, you know, in a different style. And kind of to conclude in this category, we also have SAP UI masking and UI logging. Now, at their core, they have both a foot in the access governance side and also in the data protection side as well. So, these solutions are, they're adding that extra layer of protection on top of the standard, authorization controls, where, just standard access, standard role assignments, it does have its limitations. Where these solutions kind of come into play is that they really allow you to kind of track what activities and what views the end users are accessing whilst they're logged into SAP, on their baseline access. And of course, it then provides that additional step to have a much greater say in exactly what the user can view when they've been provisioned and when they have their access. Now, next up, we have identity and digital transformation, which right now, honestly, is a very exciting area, and there's some fantastic solutions out there right now. To start with, BigID, it's actually a new partner of ours that we formed earlier this year, and it's a solution that we really strongly believe in. The solution itself is actually focusing on big data. So, overall, it is supporting the discovery, the identification, and also the classification of all of your company data for all of your applications, and not just SAP. Among some of its features, BigID combines the elements of data privacy. So by classifying and cataloging the data, both your structured and your unstructured data, so you can kind of better protect those, that are most sensitive or that are at high risk from data loss. But also, gaining visibility into data that may have been compromised within your systems. Hitachi ID, it's a solution that we've been working with for a number of years now, and really is considered one of the industry-leading solutions for the management of user identity and privileged access management, or commonly referred to as PAM. It's covering both your SAP and your non-SAP applications. So it really is a one-stop shop to effectively manage your joiner, your mover and lever processes for all of your applications. And it's also great at integrating with the SAP GRC solutions as well, to incorporate things like risk analysis and access control into the provisioning workflows. Moving on, we have the business assurance area. So, this is providing a platform to effectively document, manage, and respond to your business risks and your business controls. Process control and risk management they're certainly worth taking a much closer look at if you have the opportunity to do so, as their functionality has been very well established now for many years, and it really does cover the life cycle of a risk or a control, from its initial, definition, and documentation within the system, through to, assessments with, with the user community, and of course also follow up for any, concerns around your business risks or controls that may be failing, and trying to understand, why your controls are failing today, or why your risk is currently increasing, and that kind of point you in the direction of being able to understand how to effectively, manage mitigation and reduction. So in short, really, they're just they're providing that structure for the compliance activities, which it can be relevant for all areas of the business. So that could be IT, it could be finance, it could be needing to manage a regulatory response. We obviously back in the day, we had GDPR, and we also had SOX. It allows you to kind of manage those regulatory responses, and also your active policies as well that you have to maybe address those risks. That can also be done through the solutions. And then finally, we have cyber and fraud management. Now, there's two key solutions in this group, which are SAP Business Integrity Screening and SAP Enterprise Threat Detection. Now, these are both help to track your external threats to your SAP landscape, as well as monitoring your SAP systems, internally for potentially, fraudulent activities or general misuse, by your user communities. Now, both these solutions are extremely powerful. With the likes of business integrity screening, it's also capable of blocking activities from taking place in SAP as well. So based upon business rules and potential harmful activities taking place in your system, it's constantly in real time searching for irregularities, whether that's within purchase orders and invoicing, or customer or vendor master data. Now with ETD, on the other hand, that's more focused on real-time event detection taking place, trying to get into your SAP systems. So, reviewing for any potential application breaches, which can then be flagged for immediate investigation and follow up with the relevant owners in the business. Now, with all that said, what we do recommend, kind of what Bill was touching upon, a few moments ago, was that in order to really gain control over your SAP environments, you really need to first understand where your vulnerabilities reside. And you're always going to want to shut and lock your front door, before you set your alarm and before you start monitoring your security cameras. And that's kind of where the vulnerability assessment can really provide that additional insight. Whether, as Bill was saying, is it related to missing security patches, misconfiguration, or maybe unstable application connections. So there's lots of different things that the vulnerability assessments are looking for, but they're really trying to plug those gaps in your application before then you can really start to apply these additional monitoring and event-based detection rules. So I'm going to leave it there, but of course you can find much more information about these solutions, on our website. Of course, feel free to reach out, post-webinar if you wanted to have a deep dive of any of the solutions that have been highlighted there. So with the majority of SAP solutions, they all have qualities that come out of the box. Whether that is in relation to the functionality that they're bringing to the table, or the packaged content that they're also delivering. However, the end user experience can always be improved, regardless of the solution. So solutions such as access control or process control, they're prime contenders for enhancement, and certainly on the latest version, on 12.0, SAP have really helped to kind of stabilize the solution for much greater automation. Now, for example, out of access control, it has out-of-the-box, connectivity with the likes of SuccessFactors, Employee Central, for the automation of access provisioning within SAP. And this covers the full end-to-end, joiner, mover, and leaver process. It works by having triggers defined between access control and SuccessFactors, and using decision tables so that access control can kind of translate that information that's being received from SuccessFactors. So we're effectively teaching the solution to recognize and understand, what request is being made, right? So for example, if we have a new starter, defined within SuccessFactors, it's indicating to access control this is going to be a new user, followed by, which SAP roles, or job roles are going to be assigned to this person based upon their employee position, their location, or their employment type. In addition, access control can also be configured to integrate with other service management platforms as well. It's effectively achieving the same goal as the connectivity with SuccessFactors, except rather than having your HR triggers, you're actually getting the trigger through a creation of a service request outside of SAP. Now, likewise, the opportunity for automation in process control is also pretty limitless. As we see a lot of organizations, looking to move away from their manual processes, such as, master data entry or, data maintenance, and even case management, which generally does tend to suck up the bandwidth and the time availability of the team. So this is where we see things like process and chatbots coming into play that really kind of take the strain off those heavy manual activities and move them into a more, automated world. Now, I'm going to talk about one particular challenge that we get asked a lot about when it comes to SAP GRC solutions, and that's in its out-of-the-box reporting. Now, the standard reporting for SAP GRC, it does occasionally miss the mark. We do see organizations struggling to, consolidate the data that's available into kind of, a single readable or explainable report. Now, it doesn't mean that the data isn't there in the system, or, the data sets aren't available in the back end, but they're often spread across multiple different reports or back end tables and data sources. However, with the latest version of SAP GRC, it comes with native integration with, the analytic tools and dashboard applications, like SAP Analytics Cloud, Power BI, of course, the ever-standing SAP BW, which in turn can be used to generate these, these reporting at all different levels, regardless of the information, if it's, more detailed information for your system administrators, or it's more summary dashboard information at the CFO level. And also, by utilizing SAP Fiori, new reports can also be produced in the system, which are providing that enhanced awareness and information, just based on the pre-existing data sources. We don't need to create new data sources. The old ones and the ones that exist today, are perfectly capable of, being referenced to generate these reports. And a few examples of some of the recent reports that we've been building for our customers. One of them being, let's say, a firefighter trend analysis report. So, one of the key challenges, organizations face when using access control and firefighter is it's going to keep it on top of your firefighter logs. So, we built this trend analysis report to kind of see how many days, was lagging in when the request was made, access was used in the system, and then when it was actually approved, reviewed, validated, and approved by the appropriate, controller. So understanding how long, your wait time is will kind of help you keep on top and manage, before things kind of get out of control, because we've seen a lot of cases where organizations are, running hundreds or sometimes thousands of outstanding firefighter logs, and you're just kind of, you're just kicking the can down the road in the end of the day. A couple more examples. Access requests, per month, showing that trend analysis and average duration that a request took from initial request through to provisioning. So you can kind of see and identify, do I have any, any gaps in my process? Why is my process of provisioning access to users taking 2 weeks? What's the holdup in my process? Is it that my workflows are just far too complex? Is it that, I don't have the appropriate, owners and role owners or managers in place to provide, efficient approval? So just kind of highlighting, key data that can be used to track issues elsewhere. And then another big one that we see pretty regularly is the risk analysis dashboards. Majority of organizations we work with to begin with, they're using Excel, they're using other means they're pulling the data out of SAP and GRC, and they're kind of, they're maintaining it themselves outside of SAP, and that's just, that's not really a very good best practice to be approaching there. So we built some new risk analysis dashboards, that can break, your overall analysis levels down to user level, your country locations, your team areas. So you can easily, not just getting a full vision of where your access risks are, but also kind of seeing where are the departments, where are the locations that actually do have the highest level of risk as well. So some of the key takeaways then for today's session, we just like you, to consider. So focusing on identifying what your threats are and prioritizing ways to kind of reduce your overall risk position. And one way you can go about that is to get on top of your application vulnerabilities, by gaining that visibility, that insight to help you remediate against critical application weaknesses. Support is on hand if you're looking to define a roadmap. You understand your challenges, but you don't understand how you're going to get there. What are the things that you need to do in order to be able to address your risk? Or if you're just looking to create some awareness and some business, some business focus So that can kind of help you with the progression of reducing your overall risk level. So that actually concludes today's webinar. So if you saw something that you liked today, if you wanted to discuss any topics that have been highlighted, by Bill or by myself or by Rob, happy to discuss these topics, individually. Likewise, if there's any applications that kind of piqued interest, we're also happy to run demonstrations. We'll happily schedule these directly with you. There will be a webinar recording posted online shortly after the session, should you wish to revisit anything or share it internally. We do have another webinar coming up in November, which actually focuses on vulnerability management as an independent topic, and that will include a live demonstration of the solution that we're using to run our vulnerability assessment. So thank you all for your time. It's greatly appreciated on our side, and we hope you have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining.